I'm 7 years old, and I have just invented mystery cookies. The recipe calls for, among other things, oats, raisins, chocolate chips, marshmallows, peanut butter, strawberries, Hershey's syrup, and sprinkles. I'm pretty sure I have stumbled upon something truly groundbreaking. My mother tells me they are the best cookies she has ever tasted. And she's old. Who knows how many cookies she's tasted during her lifetime? I come up with the idea of taking my recipe to the local bakery and offering them the opportunity to sell my radical new cookies. Upon hearing this idea, most mothers would have sat me down and explained, in the gentlest way possible, that I probably wasn't the first kid to dump the entire junk food cabinet into a batch of Nestle Toll House original recipe. But my mother was not most mothers. She pulled out the old typewriter and transcribed my lengthy list of ingredients. We picked out the prettiest cookies and arranged them on my mother's finest serving plate. Then she drove me to the nearest bakery. Standing on my tiptoes, I asked to speak to the manager. I handed him my typed recipe, unveiled my mystery cookies, and announced that I had an irresistible proposal for him. The manager looked to my mother for guidance. She's an amazing baker, my mother said. Although she must have known what was about to happen, she seemed just as disappointed as I was when the manager praised me for my ingenuity, but ultimately passed on my offer. My mother was a firm believer in the anything is possible approach to parenting. Some parents feel it's their duty to shield their children from disappointment and to help them recognize when the odds are stacked against them. But in my mother's mind, providing a reality check equated to crushing my hopes and dreams. Her blind encouragement prompted me to do all sorts of bold things that kids would normally have the sense to shy away from. When I was 13, I decided to join a competitive basketball league. I had never actually played basketball before, but I was extremely tall for my age, so presumably I would be a natural. At least my mother thought so. She chose not to point out that the other girls in the league had all been playing since they were little, or that basketball was an aggressive sport and I was more of a gentle giant. Although I did touch the ball a few times that season, I mostly ran back and forth and looked unsure about where to stand. When I did get the ball, it was usually by accident, and I made sure to get rid of it as quickly as possible. Sometimes I would just turn to the side and let it bounce off of me. It must have been painful for my mother to watch. Some of the other parents described my efforts as taking up space on the court. But not once did my mother imply that I was anything less than spectacular. At the end of the season, the coach apologized to my mother. In all the years he'd been coaching, he had always made sure that every player scored at least one basket. Until now, I was his greatest failure as a coach. He probably still thinks about me, that really tall girl who refused to touch the ball. Still searching for a way to exploit my tall stature, I decided to trade in my basketball shoes for a pair of high heels and pursue a career in high fashion modeling. I knew the first step to achieving supermodel status was to put together a portfolio, so I got out the camera and enlisted my mother to act as photographer. She wasn't my first choice. She had a tendency to cut off the top of the subject's head in photos. But at least she knew how to take direction. At no point did my mother bring up the fact that in addition to being tall, models must also be petite, stick thin, and have perfect symmetry in their faces. Instead, she shouted out compliments from behind the camera as I posed and instructed her on how to best capture my essence. My strategy was to gaze at the ceiling with a sad expression on my face. Little did I know this was not my best angle. When the prints came back, what immediately struck me was how hideously misshapen my nostrils were. And there I was in every shot, tilting my head back as if I were trying to show them off. I was horrified. But my mother thought the pictures were breathtaking. She wanted to blow one up and frame it over the fireplace mantle. But before she had the chance, that film was tragically misplaced and never seen again. Despite the occasional setback, my mother's parenting strategy did pay off in the long run. When I mastered the multiplication tables, she told me I had a head for numbers, and I went on to earn a master's degree in mathematics. She praised my squeaky violin playing in grade school, and in high school I was named most musical. She's been a fan of my writing ever since I could pick up a pencil, and now dozens of other people also enjoy my writing. 2 years ago marks the beginning of my most daunting undertaking yet, motherhood. My daughter Julia was born in May 2012. My mother witnessed some of my worst moments as a new mom. One night, convinced that there was something wrong with my daughter, that she had some sort of terrible hiccuping disease, and that I would never sleep again, I confessed to my mother in between sobs that I was afraid I had made a mistake, and that I wasn't cut out to be a mom. She hugged me for a long time, and then she said the words I desperately needed to hear. "You are going to be an amazing mother." While I wouldn't call myself amazing, I did survive those first few months, and I now find myself adopting my mother's positive approach to parenting. My daughter stacks 3 Legos, and I tell her she's an architect in the making. She breaks an entire box of crayons drawing dots, and I tell her she's an artistic genius. Whatever she decides to do later in life, no matter how painful it is to watch or how much the odds are stacked against her, I will tell her what my mother told me, that anything is possible.